From Lowell, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, it's Eyes on the Watchtower with your host, Rick Farron.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Eyes on the Watchtower. My name is Rick Farron, and I'm your host here today. But I do have two co-hosts with me again. You're getting to know them by now. And rather than me introduce them, go ahead, guys. Let them know who you are.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Danvers. It's nice to be here on the show today. I've been involved with the witnesses before, and it's nice to be here and talk about different things today. So thank you for having me.
Oh, very good, Chelsea.
Hello, my name is Dick Borgie. I spent 20 years as a Jehovah's Witness, about 5 or 6 as a ministerial servant, and it's very, very good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you, Dick, and my goodness, we have a lot of people are starting to tune in and watch this program, so we welcome you all in. And if you are a Jehovah's Witness, as we always say, don't leave now. The best is yet to come. I want you to hear some of the things that is going on behind the Watchtower, some things you've probably never heard of before. But today we have an author of a brand new book. She left the Jehovah's Witnesses at 14 years old, lived in the streets, had a very difficult time. I mean, this woman went through the mill. She wants to tell us about her disconnect from the Watchtower. She wants to tell us how secretive and esoteric they are and what they can actually do to you. We talked on other programs about disfellowshipping and shunning. Adele is going to be coming on from British Columbia, Canada, via telephone, and she's going to let us know how hurtful it is when you leave the Watchtower and people no longer want to be your friends, that is, if they're still witnesses, and even your relatives will disconnect from you. There's a lot of books coming out right now concerning the Watchtower Society. People are leaving, and there's a whole myriad of books, and we'll be bringing more authors on this program as we go downstream. But the lady coming on today, her name is Adele Ruby Fores, F-O-R-S, and she wrote a book. It's called Adele et al. Adele et al. It has a subtitle. The subtitle is Jehovah's Witnesses, Hell's Angels, Serial Killers, Dissociative Identity Disorder, and a 14-year-old runaway. Now, that is some title for a book, I'll tell you. But I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start with this one. But Adele will bring us right up to speed. All I can tell you, and Adele wants to address this issue as well, I was wondering what associative or dissociative, that is dissociative identity disorder is. Friends, that is multiple personality disorder. Adele suffered from that as a result of the Watchtower doctrine and the policies and the procedures of the Watchtower. And she's going to come on and tell us how this all happened. And it's very fascinating. Multiple personalities, we've heard about it many times in the past, haven't we? You know, different, well, 3 faces of Eve. We've all heard that story. So consequently, it's very important that we get Adele on the phone right now. Adele, are you there with us? We're looking for Adele. She's coming in from British Columbia, Canada. She's the author of the book, and she's going to share with us some stuff today that's going to be very, very helpful for people understanding the Watchtower organization. We got a little technical problem evidently with the phone, but she'll be in here very shortly. Her book only came out, I'd say, maybe not even a month ago, so it's very, very timely. It caught my attention on the internet. I immediately emailed her and wanted to come on the program, so she said she would. So she's coming in from Edmonton, British Columbia. That's actually 3 hours back. So right now it's only about, I guess it's only about 9:30 out there. Is she on? So we got Adele on the line with us. Adele, you there with us? Is Adele on the line with us? Just a little technical difficulty. It's we're trying to work through this, and we'll get through it, but she'll be coming on here very shortly. It's very difficult working phone systems through microphones and switchboards, but They're doing a good job. They're doing the best they can back there. But
Hello.
Adele, you're there with us. We can hear you.
Hi. Hello, I'm here.
Well, hello, Adele. This is Rick, and of course, say hello to Chelsea and Dick.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Adele.
Well,
Hi. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
we wish you could be here with us in person, but we're glad you could come in via telephone line, Adele. I let the audience know about your book, the title, and what have you. Adele et al. Is basically the major title, and then we dealt with the subtitle concerning Hell's Angels, serial killers, dissociative disorder, identity disorder, and a 14-year-old runaway. So we wonder where we would start. I think we'll start with the 14-year-old runaway. Well, why don't you let us know how you were involved with the Watchtower organization, Adele?
Sure. Well, I was born into the organization, you might say, when I was born in 1968. My parents, my grandparents, and as a matter of fact, my great-grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness as well. I experienced quite a lot of difficulty in my prepubescent life, you might say, and things kind of culminated to a head when I was about 13.
All right, so in other words, you grew up in a Jehovah's Witness family. My mother and father both witnesses, grandparents witnesses. Basically, all your relatives are witnesses. Is it correct to say that?
It's safe to say that pretty much everyone I knew in the world was a Jehovah's Witness.
So you're a young girl now. You're 13, 14 years old. You're saying, you know, something, I'm not happy here. Well, what was it that wasn't making you happy, Adele?
I was experiencing a great deal of difference between the Kingdom Hall world and the world that I knew at home, if you will say. Also, I was an adolescent who went to junior high school at the same school that my father was an English teacher and guidance counselor. So I immediately started sensing that there was a huge amount of difference between what I was being taught at the Kingdom Hall versus what I was actually experiencing at home.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. I mean, your father being a guidance counselor. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses usually don't find themselves in a position of being a guidance counselor. And what happens? I mean, guidance counselors have to encourage high school students to go to college, right?
Right. And, of course, that wasn't what he wanted to be doing, but he had to fulfill a role as far as the public school board was concerned. And I think within him, he was very dissatisfied and frustrated. He's mentioned many times as a young elder in the congregation when I was very young, that he was frustrated by the dichotomy of views. And he felt quite restrained by the opposing, the contradicting nature of what he was at home preaching versus what at school he was expected to be doing.
So it was kind of like he was leading a double life. I mean, you picked up on that. But so as a 13-year-old girl, you started having some disconnect here. You weren't happy with what was going on. What were some of the other things, Adele, that was kind of concerning you with the Watchtower organization?
I believe that sorry, Rick, I have such a bad feedback. It's really hard to concentrate. It's very hard.
Yeah, it's very, in fact, I just want to tell you, just relax a little bit. I know exactly what you're saying. It's really hard to do that, and I appreciate you being patient with it. Maybe they can work a little bit back there to see what they could do, but you're not on a speakerphone, so you're on a landline, so we'll try to find out what the problem is. But just go ahead, Adele, and kind of black that out, and we'll just go slow with you.
Sure, okay. I had a great deal of frustration with my parents because my mother was very opposite to the submissive type of life that the congregation was expecting her to be. She was very annoyed and aggravated by the amount of time that my father had to spend away from the family taking care of church business. And she was very two-faced about her ability to assist the other individuals in the congregation, because she at one point wanted to help people's souls, but on the other hand, she was extremely angry by the fact that my father was away so much at the time. And there was a lot of fighting, but it was quiet behind closed doors fighting, the kind of fighting that very much unnerved the child. Nothing was upfront and honest as far as feelings go. In fact, my mother had a policy where she would just refuse to allow us. My sister, one sister I have, who was 9 years older than I was, she refused to let my sister and I really have emotions that were necessary to grow. And we were always constantly forced to put a smile on our faces, pretend like everything was perfectly fine, and continue to go on, even though we knew exactly that that wasn't the case. She was very angry. We were angry that nobody said so, and we all smiled and went to call in the regular times and expected everyone to believe in our story.
Well, Adele, that's that's a typical Jehovah's Witness feelings. They always say when you're a Jehovah's Witness that you're the happiest people on the planet. So, you have to put a smile on your face, go out to the Kingdom Hall and pretend that everything is just wonderful and beautiful. And that's not always the case, Adele. Hey, look, I know it's hard for you as you're talking, but we don't hear any echo or anything, so don't you worry about that. You're coming through pretty clear here, so just continue on. Now, let's just go with this. You ran away from home when you were 14? I mean, you weren't pushed out of the house? You ran away on your own or what?
No, it began actually 2 years before that. For reasons that even today I don't quite understand, other than the fact that I was a child completely separated from my own inner world, my own feelings, I deliberately caused what I thought was a fuss. I took off one day when I was 12 years old, and I was out looking for a motorcycle clubhouse, as I wanted to, I don't know what my actual intents were at that point, but I took off in the middle of the day and found myself in a world of trouble very soon after, because unfortunately, I sustained sexual assault at the hands of strangers who had given me alcohol and had essentially raped me. I returned back to my home the next day without really understanding what I had actually accomplished, and I was met by my father, who was absolutely furious. Now, I'd like to make mention that he wasn't upset, he wasn't worried, he wasn't sad, he was angry, and I knew it. My mother, on the other hand, was absolutely devastated. She could barely even speak. She went through hell. I recognize that. There were absolutely no phone calls made to any authorities. There were no attempts to apprehend the person who had actually assaulted me. I firmly believe now it is because, once again, the Watchtower Society urged its members to do everything to protect its reputation, not do anything to mar the reputation of the organization. And even though I knew where the person lived, I had the description, I had a full address, I was able to assist the police to the very door, my parents elected to do nothing, absolutely nothing to bring justice to me after this had occurred. After that, unfortunately, my father was even more embittered towards me. It was exactly a year later that a judicial committee was formed in order to ascertain whether or not I was allowed to stay in the association. And at that point, even though my father didn't accept it and I certainly didn't accept it, all of a sudden they decided when I was just 14 years old, and I was an unbaptized publisher. I was not baptized, but I was an unbaptized publisher, being that the family was very well known. With my grandfather and my father both being elders, they made the community insert were ostracized, shunned, that I was officially removed from the congregation and told that I was no longer going to have any contact with any of my family members, and only my mother and father would be there to provide me food and shelter, and that was it.
Good. If you can speak closer to your phone, too, that'd be good. I know it's very difficult
Sure.
with the echo, but stay right close to your phone. That'll help here on this end. But now that you were a young girl, 14, so were you brought in before the elders? They questioned you on your immorality?
Yes, they wanted graphic detail about what sort of things had occurred during the sexual assault, and I was incredibly uncomfortable. It was just atrocious experience. And may I add one more thing as well? This of course was a horrendous event that occurred in my life. Between the sexual assault and the elder body meeting with me, I also went through a horrendous experience where I had a very close member of my family, someone who was not affiliated with the church, but nonetheless was an immediate family member, attempted to sexually assault me in a parking lot, far from the eyes of everyone, approximately 3 months from the actual elder body meeting.
Boy, that's it. I mean, you've been through a lot, Adele. It's unbelievable. But now, I want our audience, what I want our audience to really connect with, and we talked about this, I want people listening to this program, eyes on the Watchtower, I want them to know, I mean, in most religions, I mean, first of all, you're not even going to be questioned to your practices. I mean, Catholicism, if you commit a sin, you go in, you tell the priest, he says a prayer for you, and you're out of there. But I mean, in the world of the Jehovah's Witnesses, when you're brought in for immorality, I mean, they want to know detail. I mean, is this a perverted organization or what?
I certainly believe so. I think it's completely inappropriate and had nothing to do with the issues at hand. I mean, they were certainly important issues, but my health and well-being should have been their foremost concern, and yet all they wanted to do was damn me.
Well, that's what they do, Adele. Now look, here's the other thought. Here's the other thought. So you're really not happy with the witnesses. Because of all of the difficulties you experienced, and you did mention to me prior to our conversation today that they actually created a dissociative identity disorder. Could you fill the audience in on what that is?
Yeah, my pleasure. I firmly feel, from a personal perspective, that in the early 80s, some of the platforms, some of the circuit assembly platforms, there was a great deal of talk about youth who lived double lives. And for them that meant adolescents, if you will, or even adults that had different personas, if you will, in various locations of their life, be it at the Kingdom Hall, at home, at school, at work. They were always cautioning people in the early 80s to be authentic and true. And yet, I could tell everyone around me had to different degrees, had been experiencing this kind of disconnect from themselves in all the areas of their lives because they're ruled by fear and not motivation to live lives that are congruent with what they truly believe within themselves. So this false front, if you will, was demonstrated in many, many different areas of my life. Now, I have taken it to a very large degree, in fact, making it an unfortunate and permanent part of my thinking. As I can explain maybe a disorder is different from an illness, whereas an illness comes on, it's biological in nature, perhaps acute. When you have a disorder of this sort, it means that you have a disordered pattern of thinking, if you will. It means that your pattern of thinking is dysfunctional and working against you. But as a coping mechanism, that was what I could only do. Normally, children are very susceptible to developing dissociative identity disorder because there's nowhere for them to go. An adult can maybe get up and leave a marriage or walk out of a job. A child is like a little hostage in the family. And if that family is dripping in dysfunction, they have to learn to cope within that center. And that is exactly what I did. I began creating different people so that I could function. For example, I was still forced to go to my uncle, the uncle that had attempted to sexually assault me. I had to continue to associate with that part of the family. I had to sit at a kitchen table and look across from him and pretend like nothing happened. There was no discussion, there was no talk. He was better called onto the map, if you will, to explain what happened or what happens in the incident. So I was essentially going insane within my body because I had nowhere to run. I didn't even have the option of going to school and talking to a teacher because my own father was bloody counselor. So I was a typical individual developing a disorder based upon the fact that I had zero options, I had no one to listen to me, and I was absolutely trapped in a world of hypocrisy.
Can you come a little closer to the phone, Adele? I think we can hear you better when you're closer, even though it might be a little more echoing. I'm not sure, but it's better for here, at least at the studio. Adele, so you had multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, as you say, is the same. But we've got a couple of colleagues here, a couple of my co-hosts. They'd like to ask you some questions. Mm-hmm. We've got Chelsea Danvers. We've got Dick Borgie. Mm-hmm. They're listening to everything you said intently. It's very amazing that you've been through a lot, Adele, but you come across as a very positive-minded lady. We're glad you could be with us today. Chelsea, do you have a question for Adele?
I do. Hi, Adele. I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. I guess one of my questions would be, what would trigger the different personalities? Was there something that would actually trigger another one coming on, or did it just come out of the blue?
No, usually these things are triggered by stress and discomfort, and the level to which I was exemplifying this disorder, it was, right now back. My emotions were in fact dictating which individual I was allowing to come forward and be. So I was no longer able to control my own emotions. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I was allowing the external forces to have the impact and basically be the ability to change who I was. And you probably can suspect that is completely contrary to what healthy psychological functioning is. And I think that goes quite in line with the fact that witnesses in general are told by what the organization says, as opposed to looking inside and feeling their own emotions, and really acting on how their heart and soul is telling them to act.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I don't know if Dick had any questions for you as well.
More a comment than anything else. Chelsea?
Yeah.
Chelsea.
Adele.
Adele, I'm sorry. Yeah. Adele, I was this fellowship for masochism, and I had a a problem, psychological problem called post-traumatic stress syndrome that I got from being in the Marine Corps and in Vietnam. And I found when I approached the elders with this situation that they were clueless. They didn't know how to handle it. I would say that they do not have the expertise or the qualifications to be judging anybody. One of the brothers that sat in on my judicial committee had a 10th grade education. And as you know, most Jehovah's Witnesses aren't college graduates or ever had a course in psychology in their life. And now they have your life in their hands, and they're going to dictate. What they usually do is disfellowship you, which makes the situation that you're in even worse. Did you find that after you talked to the elders that you were in a worse situation than you were before you talked to the elders?
By far.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And you're absolutely right. They displayed absolutely no finesse whatsoever in dealing with a troubled teen. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say that there's no room for normal adolescent growth and development within the organization. And you know, that teenagers have to actually become rebellious in order to individuate. Well, that's a fancy word for become their own person. Now, that alone is something that I think most witnesses would disagree with. You're not to be your own individual. You're to be part of the collective. So for an adolescent to go through typical adolescent development in a healthy function means to kind of buck the trends and ask lots of questions and defy rules. This is all part of healthy growth and development, but there's zero room for that within the organization. For adults or for children, because everyone has to believe the same, everyone has to feel the same, and believe in the future the same. There's no room for anyone to ask any questions, any critical questions, or investigations of any sort into the beliefs. You just have to keep believing and swallowing everything that you're fed. And I don't know if it was because I was extraordinary in that I couldn't deal with the hypocrisy that I saw, or if I was exactly the same as everyone else, but I let it all out on the outside. So my sister is 9 years older than I. She told me at the time that she knew what I was feeling. She could totally identify with it. She decided when she was younger that she would just internalize it, and now she insists on anti-anxiety, it's called Maalox for stomach disorders. She lived with that sort of pain, whereas I took everything outside and rebelled. We tried to leave twice by running away from home, but the elders quickly caught up to me, that's for sure. And as soon as anyone shows any signs of being outside of acceptable boundaries, they're cut short very quickly, as you know.
Well, Adele, this is Rick Farron, and no doubt, the Watchtower beat you up big time. You're out of it today. How are your parents and former witness friends treating you today, Adele?
I haven't had a conversation outside of maybe two with my family in 20 years. It's actually 20 years this November. So I just have a big empty hole in my life and my heart where the support and love of the family and my community should have been.
Well, thank you very much, Adele, for coming on Eyes on the Watchtower. We certainly appreciate your presence today. Well, we want to thank you for coming in. We'll see you again, folks, and goodbye to everyone. And the last one leaving the Watchtower, please turn off the new light.